Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Now, guys, the next two videos may be a lot about racism. And it's what you expect. Oh, no, it's not racism against black people. It's racism against white people. Now, I think we've gone through a few videos today on how, past few years, that racism is becoming more rampant. And I think it's kind of obvious on where it's being aimed towards to. See, here's the thing. When people start saying white privilege, it starts saying that, like, oh, well, white people are the problem, white people are this and that. Automatically trying to divide and cause hate among a certain group of people because of the color of their skin. It's kind of more hilarious than what we see with the Martin Luther King type of debacle, with that horrendous statue even being erected on our public eyes. As Martin Luther King has said before, is that you base people by the color of, not by the color of their skin, but by their actual personalities. And, of course, that's not what's happening here. So, we're gonna go delve into this type of racism and what's really been going on. Here's a video, and then we'll be going over the article of how ludicrous and how racist this really is.
Is, of course, the words white nationalism and white supremacy. For it is clear that the FBI makes a direct point between dehumanizing and derogatory comments which come from white nationalists and white supremacists to the idea that it generates, as you have heard here on the floor of the House, it generates the death of Dr. Martin Luther King. It generates Charlottesville. It generates Charleston, South Carolina. It generates hateful acts that result in death. This is the kind of intolerance, or the tolerating this, that we cannot suffer, and the intolerance that we cannot suffer. Because the idea of white nationalism as superior to others and white supremacy indicates that somebody else might die. This resolution is an important resolution to affirm this Congress and this nation that we believe that we all are created equal, and as Dr. King said, that we shall overcome, and someday we shall overcome. I yield back.
So now we have, that's what's been going on with her saying about white racist this and racist that. But I think what she doesn't seem to understand is that she's truly the actual racist one, as most of these Democrats are. Because if it's not being somewhat or completely racist towards black people, with hiding their words between other words to make them not seem racist, they'll be directly and very actively racist towards white people. And funny enough, it seems that they're being very racist towards, or the people that are being very racist towards white people are actually other black people. Democratic ones, for that matter. So, I think we have a bigger issue at play here. And we have this with Texas Congresswoman introduces bill combating white supremacy-inspired hate crimes. The bill expands of hate crimes, seeking prevention and prosecution of white supremacy-inspired hate and conspiracy to commit white supremacy-inspired hate crime. A white supremacy crime-inspired hate crime has occurred when white supremacy ideology has motivated the planning, development, preparation, or perpetration of actions that constituted a crime or were undertaken in furtherance of activity that it effectuated would have constituted a crime, according to the bill. Conspiracy to engage in white supremacy-inspired hate crimes is detailed as two or more persons engaged in planning, development, preparation, or preparation of white supremacy inspired by hate crime. Well, instead of actually reading this here, we're going to go over exactly what this is and the actual bill of Congress and what have you with Jeremy Carl, what he actually says. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, Democrat, Texas, long one of the most entitled, imperious, and racist members of Congress, has just introduced a bill in the House that literally criminalizes political speech by white people. It goes on, saying that by at least one of whom published material advancing white supremacist ideology, antagonism based on replacement theory, or hate speech that vilifies or is otherwise directed against any non-white person or group, such as published material, was published on a social media platform or by other means of publication with the likelihood that it would be viewed by persons who are predisposed to engaging any action of furtherance of white supremacy-inspired hate crime or who are susceptible to being encouraged to any actions of furtherance of white supremacy hate crime. So, to further add to this as well, The Department of Justice Authority Enforcement Monitoring and Reporting will conduct operations and activities pursuant to aforementioned white supremacy-inspired hate crimes with regard to information or evidence by the Department. The Department further maintains authority to investigate, intercede, and undertake other actions deemed necessary and appropriate to interdict, mitigate, or prevent violent activity. The Department also maintains authority to prosecute individuals engaged in white supremacy-inspired and conspiracy to commit white supremacy-inspired hate crimes, and will maintain records of white supremacy-inspired hate crimes and related actions. Lastly, the bill seeks the amendment of the Matthew Shepard and James Breyer Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act by noting mass shootings and other hate crimes motivated by white supremacy have been increasing in frequency and intensity, inspired by conspiracy theories, blatant bigotry, and mythical falsehoods such as replacement theory. All instances must be prevented, and severe criminal penalties must be applied to their perpetrators. Yeah, so essentially they just don't want you to be able to criticize black people or do any of the mentions that happens to be with black people in general. That's just reality. What they want. And here's the thing, you can't do that by the First Amendment, so there you go. The hate crimes are already being put in place, by the way. You cannot just actively go and shoot a black person or go shoot anybody of any race for any matter of time, because if there's ample evidence of them showing there to be a hate crime, then yeah, it's a hate crime. This person in this Texas representative is definitely racist, but maybe not racist towards black people, but racist towards white people in particular. And this is what we have. This is my biggest problem here. People want to rag on how black people are being hated upon and black people are this or that or what have you. But in all reality, what I've seen is that we have had more people being racist against white people, whereas white people being essentially not being hired for being white at jobs, or the attack on, I guess even we say that Kyle Rittenhouse calling him a white supremacist, even though that's not really the case. He was defending himself. We have many cases to where white people are just being hated upon, and white privilege is one of the bigger ones that they've used recently, even by their own white people who are also Democratic, and it's not faring well. They are causing this division, they're causing this hate. Now, black people, I have to ask you, do you really agree that you should that white people should be silenced for their actual criticism of you, or criticism of pretty much anybody? Because what we're seeing here is that black people are going to have, or is going to have the reverse racism here, to where black people are not going to be heavily discriminated against, but white people will be heavily discriminated against. And that's my biggest concern here, is that white people are seeming to be mostly hated against, which is part of the reason why we have more white people shooters or white men shooters, because not only are you white male, you're hated for being the color of your skin, and then you're also hated for, being male. So that has a massive damage to somebody's psyche, and that may maybe have them commit these horrendous crimes. So I think what we need to do here is really try to push out the narrative of hating white people, go back to maybe judging people by their personalities, not by the color of their skin, and maybe, just maybe, not putting up laws that would actively go against the First Amendment, and maybe causing hate to one particular group of people. Maybe that's something we shouldn't do. Well, guys, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, share, and as always, take care.